Alright guys, let's do a bow and then let's get running round.
Yes, good hustle, keep it going.
Are we listening? Are we listening?
Alright, welcome to the DadJitsu Podcast. We're here at Grapple Collective and we have just finished up the Endured Professional Open Mat. We're here with Bickerton and Annica. Not sure on your surname. What's your surname?
My surname is Von Mantripp.
Von Mantripp,
Yes.
Nice. They are preparing for the Endured Professional. And we thought we'd sit down and have a chat about how your preparation's going and how the gym's going and go from there, really. Do you want to tell us a bit about you, Max, and a bit about how the gym's going, how long you've been here and things?
Sure. The gym's been going for just over 2 years now. We opened in March 2 years ago. It's been going great, going really well. We've got great competitors like Annica here.
Amazing.
I myself, I've been training for 15 years now. Black belt, obviously I've been training 15 years, so it's kind of obvious. And been on the scene for a while, plugging away, working really hard, and looking forward to competing on Endured.
Who have you got? Who are you going up against?
I've got a match against Casper Larson, he's a really well-established competitor. We've never crossed paths before. I think he spent a lot of time as one weight category above me,
right?
And I think he's maybe lost a little bit of weight now, or maybe he's just cutting down for this match. That's why we never managed to face each other before, which I think makes this matchup more exciting. Because two guys who've both been on the scene for a long time and just happen to have never crossed paths.
Do you know much about his approach, his style?
From what I know, I think he's pretty well-rounded, to be honest. I think we're somewhat similar in that respect. It looks like he's got good wrestling. It looks like he's comfortable passing, playing guard. He's got submissions as well. So I think he's a really good, well-rounded opponent, and someone that I'm going to have to bring my very best game to get the win.
Yeah, that sounds good. And what about you, Annica? Do you know much about your opponent?
I do not know much about my opponent. I don't like to study what they are good at. I just want to bring my A game and hopefully try get to that in the competition.
I think that's right. There are different ways of doing it, isn't there? I think you can either research your opponent, try and devise a game plan, or sometimes you think, well, look, they're going to do what they do, but if I just come in and do what I'm good at, that should be enough.
Exactly. I just want to go out there and try my best to either get her into my clothes. Actually, should I not talk? I feel like I shouldn't go for
There's
my
some
plan.
secrets coming out now.
Maybe it's not best to go for my game
This could be a double bluff, though. It could be a double bluff.
It could be a double bluff. Maybe I should do a double bluff.
That's the way to play it. Yeah.
That is the way.
For the Goga Plata.
Yeah.
That 10th planet. This is the 10th planet school, right?
That's my A game, to be fair. Watch out. But I absolutely adore the ecological approach that
Amazing.
Grapple Collective do, and it prepares you for competing. So I used to get really bad competition nerves, but since joining this gym, we basically prepare for it in every single training session.
So have you before coming here, you trained, I can't remember what the other term is for the...
Prague.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Over in Wales?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
amazing. So what's the other term for if you're not ecological?
Traditional?
Oh, for the ecological approach?
If you're not using ecological, I can't remember there's a term
people
for
tend
it.
to call it the traditional approach.
Okay, all right.
But the idea is that there is no actual approach to teaching. It's just based on tradition. So it's
Sure.
This is how I was shown it, so that's how I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
Rather than the ecological approach is more of an umbrella term. The real teaching method that we use here, and I think most people in Jiu-Jitsu that are trying to use this style of teaching, is called the constraints-led approach, or CLA for short.
Okay, and so you found you came from a traditional approach, but you've really blossomed under the sort of ecological approach.
Yeah, with the traditional approach, they would go through point by point what to do, and I've got ADHD. I really struggle with my focus. So
I'm going to pass the mic to Steve at this point.
Yeah, I've also got ADHD. So carry on.
I would really struggle with focus, and they would go through it step by step, and all of a sudden we're clapping and the information is gone.
And you're like, what?
Exactly.
What happened? Yeah.
Exactly. And then not everyone, lots of people would just sit around waiting for the coach to come see them individually to tell them what to do. So we would waste a lot of time when we could be training.
So you find the creative element of Ecological is kind of just the act.
Exactly.
Okay, that works really well for you.
So with the Ecological approach, we do game-based activities to achieve an objective.
Yeah.
And I think it finds a fighting style that's right for you, and like you can move around in ways which you think would be the right move to do, and you learn by doing rather than by trying to imitate.
Okay. How do you find sort of training people from the start with the Ecological approach? Do you find you get the same returns? Or do you feel it has to be sort of like you have to up to a certain level before you get real good returns? Or
Well, when I first came, I was a bit wary of their approach, to be honest. And I was thinking, how do you know that this is good? How do you know that I'm doing the right thing? But the more I did it, the more I realised you don't need to know what you're doing. You just have to try get the objective. And if you have a good coach, like I do, they will tell you if you're doing something wrong. But most of the time, if you're getting the result, you're not doing it wrong. You're exploring different ways to get an objective.
Yeah. Okay. As long as you're hitting the points.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's interesting.
I really love it because you don't have to sit and focus. You can just go out, do what you want, and learn along the way.
Yeah, okay. And do you find you come up with your own sort of, I guess you come up with your own style a lot more easily because you're doing your own style from the start?
Yeah, no, exactly. I've got a very flexible guard, and usually men, I've been brought up with men coaches, and they don't usually have flexible guards. So they didn't really know how to help me with my grappling technique. But doing the Ecological approach, I found ways to move which aren't typical, and they get good results.
Okay.
And like flicking my leg over and getting arm bars and all sorts, but you wouldn't really learn that in a traditional class. You would learn something that's good all around. It depends.
It's difficult, isn't it? Did you notice that your sort of cohort of people that you're coaching, Max, are like all different styles? Sometimes you might go to a club and you really notice themes, obviously because of the way that someone's teaching. Everyone's good at half guard or something like that. I know we're half guard heavy in our club, aren't we? But do you notice that everyone's kind of just blossoming in different ways?
I think there's a mixture there, to be honest. There's nothing like special as such about this constraint-set approach. So coaches have biases, we all do, and that's no different because I'm using a constraint-set approach. I still have biases towards certain things and away from certain things. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. So definitely I think that it can seem like we have a style as a gym still, even though people are coming up with their own solutions.
Sure.
Their solutions are still impacted by my philosophy as a grappler, or even some blind spots that I might have as a coach as well. So it's definitely not like by no means is it perfect or anything like that, and it is still susceptible to any shortcomings that you might have as a coach, the same as any other teaching method. But I think the thing that I find is sort of common that I really like is I feel like we create grapplers that kind of want to push a good pace because they're just constantly looking for that next thing that they're trying to do. They're not waiting for an opportunity for a technique to present itself. They are creating their own opportunities for the actions that they're trying to make, or the effects that they're trying to create, which I like.
Have you taught tradition? Did you teach traditionally prior? When did you start using the Ecological?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been teaching for quite a long time, almost 10 years now. I started teaching when I was a purple belt, and like obviously I kind of started with like 1 or 2 classes a week, and then like built up gradually, taught privates, taught more classes, became a head coach, started my own gym. So it's been like a gradual process through like all the different sort of layers of the teaching hierarchy. And the majority of that time, I was using the traditional approach. I was teaching classes in much the same way as I was taught. I learned a lot through watching instructionals. And that's something that I always found almost difficult to almost justify to myself when I started to get into teaching in this way and found it to be more effective. Then I'd be like, but I learned a load of stuff from John Danaher instructionals, so isn't that the complete opposite? But when I reflect back, I think there's two things that are important. The way that I was using instructionals is I was using them to give me focus that I would use in my live training, which is what we're trying to create when we use the constraint-led approach. So I think that actually it was kind of a way of me doing a similar thing for myself without having an understanding of that full coaching methodology. And then the other thing I think is that like John Danaher's instructionals are a great example of providing a really solid framework for grappling, which can help you make sense of what's happening in this chaotic sport that we do, right? And I think that that's something that's useful regardless of what teaching method you're using. So if you're using a traditional approach and your coach has a really good solid framework for grappling that they use to inform the way they teach, like that coach is going to be better than another coach using a traditional approach who doesn't have that
just coming
framework.
in, making it up on the spot.
Exactly. And the same thing, like someone who's using a constraints-led approach but doesn't have a really solid, coherent framework that they're using to inform the way they teach grappling, that is not going to be as good in my opinion. So again, I did used to teach using the kind of normal approach, and I started to implement this stuff kind of slowly. I got exposed to it the same way most people did. Greg Souders, like obnoxious videos on Instagram. Greg's like a really good friend of mine now.
It's good for marketing.
Greg's a really good friend of mine now. So yes, I'm just teasing him. But in fairness, that was kind of like how I saw those videos at first. But I definitely felt like, oh, there's something useful here. I couldn't at the time see how you could, like I'd only ever learned by someone telling me exactly how to do moves. And so I couldn't see how you could show someone the whole of jiu-jitsu without that at all. But I could already see that like, oh, more live practice, like more resistance in training, that's going to be good. I could see that straight away, but I couldn't see, and I think this is where most people struggle, is like when they, without trying it for themselves and without really looking into it, is, well, how do you do everything that way when the only way that I've seen everything until this point is through someone telling me, breaking down, this is a move, this is another move.
Tradition,
And that, to be honest, it's difficult. Like it takes a lot of time and practice. And like I went through a process of doing a combination of like task-based games and some demonstration of techniques that I would get people to drill. I started off with doing a combination. This was over 3 years ago now when I started doing that. And then it just was like a gradual process of the explicit instruction taking up a smaller and smaller part of the class, and watching the training in both methodologies, and feeling like as a coach when I was watching it, I'm like, I watch people going against each other with resistance, and I'm like, this looks really useful, this looks like they're learning. And then I'd watch them when they're drilling, and I'm like, it's better than nothing, don't get me wrong, like it's not like drilling does nothing, but it didn't look as effective, it didn't look as useful as what I was seeing them doing when we were playing games. So then for me it was just kind of gradually the games take up more and more of the class, and then I kind of did a poll of the students here and was like, I want to try and implement this approach fully. I think it will be better, but obviously I don't know and we've not tried it yet. Are you comfortable with me doing like a few months trial period to see how it goes, and you can all give me feedback? And then
that's great.
Overwhelmingly, the response was like, yes, let's do it. Like we sort of trust you. And I think I definitely felt like as soon as we went into it, and did the first few months, it was like, okay, yeah, this is better. And that was like overwhelmingly the response that I got from the students here, at least anyway.
When you went into it, either of you could... Oh, go on, you got to go, Annica, yeah. That's all right.
Lovely talking with you guys.
Yeah, lovely talking
I
to
hope you have a
as
lovely
well.
day.
We'll see you next time. We'll see you next time at the Endured Invitational. See you later. Take it easy. Yeah, question. One of the concerns we heard from one of the chaps that we interviewed, and it's something that I'd not really thought about until that point, but it's a factor, is going from, say, doing like an hour and a half lesson where 45 minutes might be a warm-up and drilling, and then you get 45 minutes of positional and normal sparring, to essentially going to a class of almost all sparring. Did you find that there were kind of people getting injured more because of the increase in live volume, things like that? Or what were your kind of experiences of that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and you do have to be careful how you scale the resistance. I think that generally a constrained game is less dangerous inherently, generally speaking, than free sparring.
Right, okay.
So the added danger just comes because we're getting more exposure to the thing. That if we do 45 minutes of live training versus 15 minutes of sparring at the end,
it's a volume thing, isn't it?
There's more volume, and so even if it's overall less dangerous, but we do more of it, like there could be a bigger net danger there.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to kind of think about, well, how much sort of risk is unavoidable in the training that's actually going to make a difference to how we perform. And then on top of that, obviously, we need to be careful what we do as coaches as to how we set up the games so that they're safe. Like, I think as a coach, like, my number one responsibility is the safety of my students. And so I think, if anyone's out there considering trying to use this approach and they haven't really done it, or they're early in their journey, like, definitely put a lot of thought and effort into like how you scale the resistance so it's safe, or as safe as it can be. So that might look like, I don't know, for example, like playing games when it comes to leg locks where rather than trying to finish people, you're trying to like pass a leg from one side of your body to the other, right? Very, very unlikely that someone gets hurt doing that. There's still loads of really, really good skills that are involved there. That's not to say that that's the only game you would ever play when it comes to leg locking, but I would say about 80% of the skills that we need to be good at leg locking can be practiced in that kind of way, and then we only need to do the like extra 20% or whatever that we need to actually practice finishing mechanics and stuff like that, which realistically, if we can maintain connection to someone and control a leg and move it around our body at will, the task of then going from that level of skill to being able to finish someone, it's actually not that difficult if you've already got those skills in the bank. So yeah, for sure, the game's about like strangling and breaking people and slamming them to the ground. People, like, there's going to be a risk of injury, right, if we want to train the sport properly. But I think, and then the other thing that I would say is exposing people to live resistance from the start is going to make them more able or more capable of like dealing with live resistance.
There's a conditioning element there, isn't there? Definitely.
Conditioning physically, like the sort of psychological toll of someone trying to resist.
Fight or flight.
Understanding how to navigate that environment in a safe way. Where it's like you wouldn't teach a kid to ride a bike by explaining to them how to ride a bike and then putting them on a bike without stabilizers and saying go. And essentially, this is kind of how I see drilling, free sparring as a model of teaching grappling. You're explaining to them some of the stuff, but you're not allowing them to experience the risks in a safe way. Whereas something like a bike with stabilizers, or they say that like a bike where balance bikes are better because they get that feedback and they can feel what it's like to balance on a bike, and they get the feedback of falling, but in a safe way. And I kind of think that's one of the ways that I think about using a constraints-led approach, that we're trying to expose people to these risks, to these kind of reactions, expose them to resistance in a way that that's scalable or manageable enough that they can actually understand what's happening to some extent, and that they can deal with it in a safe way. And then hopefully when they go into full live training, that better equips them to deal with that. than it would if they just drilled.
Yeah. So I guess you're gathering data all the time as well, aren't you?
Exactly.
You know, so I guess...
and I think this is such a good point. Like, and that's in my opinion where drilling is less effective because there isn't live data, right? If someone has to let you do something, you're actually not getting any feedback from that. Now, obviously there might be things like submission holds where you might be having a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, that feels tighter, that doesn't feel so tight. And this is definitely better, and I think a lot of people encourage people to use this style of teaching or training. But I think that there's better feedback sources than someone's words, because what we think is happening isn't always what's happening.
No, and I guess it caters for every type of learning, doesn't it? I think, you know, it's... I'm a very visual learner, so I can get down with that.
Yeah. Well, on that point, do you find that everyone sort of responds quite well to it, or do you find some people come in and they're always not understanding the games?
Yeah. So,
do you know what I mean?
So yes, there's maybe a few
different
points.
types of learning, aren't there? Like one of the things I think Greg's never really been pushed on is like when you look at I'm not an expert, he knows more about learning than I do, clearly, but we have visual learners, kinesthetic learners, there's lots of different types of learners, and from coaching we're both different styles. Sometimes I've noticed someone probably didn't matter what style I use, they're just finding it really hard, and other people pick everything up really quick. How have you noticed people responding to it?
Really well, to be honest. Like, I think that in terms of like the different learning styles, like there's definitely a point there. I think those like different like groupings of learning styles, I think there's been a pushback against that recently, like from the scientific community, in that like there's not just no one's just one type of learner. And I guess ultimately, like if we're talking about grappling, I think most people, this is where we could potentially have a good debate, is like if we wanted people to be able to describe grappling really well, and that's what we were trying to bring about in our students, then maybe a lot of live training wouldn't be the thing to do.
Yeah, sitting down and talking about it.
Exactly, and maybe if you're trying to create really good coaches, there might be something else there. But I think generally speaking, most people come to train because, well, probably to have fun and have good exercise, which is the main reason why I use this approach, to be honest, because it does those things better. But then the third thing is to get better at physically grappling against resistance, right? I don't think anyone's desperate to be really good at drilling or wants to be able to talk really well about it. Maybe they do, but for me, at least what I'm focused on as a coach is making people better at doing this thing when someone's trying to stop them. And I don't think there's any way around. They have to be exposed to live resistance to do that, and I think it needs to form the basis of the training. So my experience is that the people that have come in and train here, the results that we're getting is great. Like obviously maybe I'm biased, but like it's true. And we have some competition results that do speak for themselves as well.
Good list of achievements up there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's looking pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah, and what I really like is which I think is the biggest difference, because I think sometimes focusing on the elite level athletes, like it's nice having Annica say really, really good things about the gym and stuff, but the reality is like Annica was good when she arrived. Like Annica's a really motivated individual, and she's trying to get good at this sport and she's really dedicated to it. People like that are always going to get good, almost no matter what environment they're put in, as long as it's not like a really bad environment. What I've noticed has been the biggest change since I started teaching in this way is like the lowest level or the medium level of the class. Those people seem to improve so much more now than what I had experienced previously.
Right, okay.
Because again, like, I really tried to think a lot, because I had the same sort of resistance that I think everyone naturally has to this approach when they haven't really learnt about it. And you know in yourself that I got better using the traditional approach, so it clearly works. It's like, one thing that I sort of that's helped me understand why I think this works better is I think there's like almost like a translation that you have to be able to take something from drilling and apply it in sparring. So it's almost like you have to learn this language that you can use to translate the one into the other. And I almost see the constraint-set approach as being like a better way of our coaching interventions being in the language that the person needs to be able to apply them to the live sparring, rather than actually putting more emphasis and more work on the student to be like, here's what I want you to do. You figure out how to make it work when someone's trying to stop you, you know?
The whole like connection piece is like lost, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so like, I think the people who are really motivated, or the people who just get it, like maybe that translation is easy for them. Like they were going to get good no matter what, almost. And I have students that train here that like barely train and keep getting better, and it's they're just very talented, and I will definitely try and take credit. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I will try and take credit. There's one person in particular, and everyone who trains at the gym knows who it is. But he will say that it's because of me. He's 100% wrong, but I will let him say it.
Just going back to sort of style.
Yeah.
So with this approach, how much do you think the style of your guys has kind of happened via osmosis of watching each other and training with each other? In that kind of open mat style vibe? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I don't know. It's really hard to say, right? It's really hard to. There's so many different factors at play in how people decide to even just try something new, let alone actually get good at it. So yeah, really, really difficult to say how much of it is due to that, but I think it's a really important thing to remember as a coach. Yeah. And it's also important to remember that this will happen naturally. If someone's struggling with something and everyone's playing the same sort of game or whatever, like they will look around and see what other people are doing or what their training partner's doing to them. Like this will happen automatically. And some people will go away and look and watch matches or watch instructionals to try and get some. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's just them trying to search for solutions that are going to help them when they come back to the live environment, which I think is good and healthy if that's something they want to do. So
when we've been using CLA, that's something we try to use is like having sort of a period of like 5 minutes in between each game for the people just to sit and talk about what was working well and sort of troubleshoot ideas like immediately after the round. I think Joseph Chen talks about using that kind of approach. I think that's a really useful
I first saw Ed Ingelmels using this, and it was really interesting. Yeah, I went to one of his classes where he was doing it, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I immediately, the next class I taught, like that evening, I was like, let's try this and see how it works. And I've spoken to Greg about it as well, and like there's definitely like a ton of value there. I think that me personally, I have a I prefer the live training. Like I think that there's something that Greg Sauder said to me that I think there's loads of things he said to me that were stuck in my head, but this is one of them. It was like, what is it? Like doing is better than saying, what is it? Yeah, he's basically saying that it's better to do something than to talk about it, it's better to watch it. Yeah, that's it. Doing's better than watching, and showing is better than telling. So there's like a sort of hierarchy of things, and I think this is important. So like, let's say someone is not able to physically train, maybe they're injured or whatever, or they're just so exhausted. Maybe it, like you're going back to like we were talking about injuries, but I think it was also kind of touching on the exhausting nature of
the
live
increase
training
in just
as well.
live training. Yeah.
And like, I think that if you have a room full of people where, you know, a full class of live training is too much physical work, then you split it up and you let them talk about what just happened. Well, they weren't able to do that. That time wasn't going to be feasible for them to spend doing it. So the next best thing they can do is talking about it, showing each other stuff and interacting like that. I think that's great. But I think that wherever there's a choice to be made and there's an opportunity for them to feel it and do it and get down and dirty with it, like I think in my opinion, like that should be what we do when it's available. And then when it's not, the next best thing is going to be watching someone do it live. Talking about how we do it is probably after that.
Well, they say in parenting, don't they? Kids won't listen to what you tell them, but they'll copy what you show them. My kids are always swearing. I don't know where they're getting that from.
And this is one thing I just want to touch on as well, because I see a lot of the like debate about like CLA versus traditional and whatever, and people, it seems to be a misunderstanding that the CLA means you can't show anyone anything. And like that's not true. Like showing stuff is part of it. It's maybe just like the way that we show it is different. We're not showing it. We're not going to try and show a movement in the hope that you copy me exactly.
Yeah, sure.
We're going to show a movement to maybe inspire you to try a different avenue, to let you know what's possible, to make it more clear what your objectives are. Because I might say like, oh, go and put your chest on their chest. But if I'm setting up the game and I physically do it, it's a lot easier for like a visual learner, if you want to call them that, to understand what I want you to do rather than me just saying it.
And I guess it allows for all the different neural pathways, all the different body types, all the different thought processes and the learning styles, doesn't it? It sort of incorporates everything rather than just being just one way, my way or the highway sort of traditional approach.
Definitely. And touching back, I know because obviously Annica brought it up and you were talking about like ADHD with the CLA. It's purely anecdotal, but from what I've seen, the people who feel most strongly about this being a way better method of them learning, they all seem to have ADHD.
Really?
So
I could be a convert.
I feel like
I could be a convert in the making.
What I've seen, like everyone that I teach, maybe there's obviously confirmation bias because they probably wouldn't come here if they didn't want to train in this way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But everyone seems to like it. But there's definitely people who are like, yeah, I like this approach, but if we went back to drilling, I wouldn't really care that much. Like, whatever, I like both. But then there's some people, more people who prefer it quite a bit more to drilling, and they'd rather do it than drilling. And then there's a few people who are like, I could never fucking learn at all until we did this. And those people all have ADHD.
Interesting. Because I remember, ever since white belt, I've talked to you about like zoom out approaches, right? Yeah. And just because I find
conceptual stuff.
Yeah, all the concept stuff, which I guess is the CLA, isn't it? Because I think when you've got ADHD, you can just see all of it and you don't know where to start. Yeah. If you know what I mean. Yeah. When you do it, all the moves you've been taught, and it's just a great big it's like a jigsaw puzzle that's all the pieces are all apart, sort of thing, you know. So it's nice to kind of the idea of just having you can just make my own picture. Yeah. Sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. But I think as well, like I think the point I made about the framework is really important as well, because that like. Again, why someone who, like John Danaher, is objectively a really good coach, right? And, okay, he's starting to use more CLA stuff now anyway.
Recently,
but, like, he was getting great results even when he wasn't. But, like, he has a fantastic framework. So even though he's throwing technique here, technique there, his students have a better idea of at least how they can put them together into, like, the big picture. And equally, like someone could be using a constraints-led approach, but not have a very coherent framework for grappling. Yeah. And it would probably feel very chaotic. Like, it's definitely not that you still, in my opinion, like you need to understand grappling. Arguably, I would say better to do a good job as a CLA coach, because you can't just copy someone else's instructional. Let's face it, that's how most people teach nowadays, to be honest. Myself included, before I was teaching like this, I was using my own experience to reframe and reform the information that I was getting from instructionals, but I was essentially just putting my own spin on what I was learning from John Danaher instructionals. So now I have to really try and understand what's actually happening when two people try and grapple. And yeah, for me, it's fascinating. Like, I love it. Like, I'm like quite a nerdy person anyway. So, but yeah, I feel like it's opened up this whole sort of extra world of grappling for me to try and understand. And it seems very simplistic sometimes. You know, like Greg just says a lot of stuff like, you know, go and get attached to. He calls it center mass. I might call it the torso. And they're going to try and use their head, arms, and legs to keep you away from their torso, and you're going to try and get to it, right? Which is very simple when you put it that way. But it's easy for me now because he's done that work. Yeah. But actually putting that framework together, watching and seeing that that's what's happening, no one said it like that before. It seems obvious once he said it, but I think like figuring it out and putting it into a framework that's simple to understand and coherent Like that's where the like real sort of skill and understanding comes in.
It's a lot of leg work, isn't it?
Yeah,
Getting all that
exactly.
put together.
And it's easy for coaches like me now because Greg did that like a lot of that heavy lifting for us.
Yeah.
And I can just be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
I'll use that and I'll just add to it a little bit.
Do you find sometimes like a new guy will come in, a new guy or girl will come in, and it's like a body type you haven't come across or a thinking style you haven't come across, which is like kind of throws the cat amongst the pigeons? Or do you find it just kind of you can apply something?
Not really. One thing I did notice, and which I wanted to mention earlier, and I went off on a tangent. It seemed to be a lot easier. I think you kind of have to overcome like the initial inertia when you're using this approach. Once you have a room full of people who are used to being task focused and they're used to training in this way, so I can set up a game now. Everyone pays attention, obviously, they were doing that before, but they know what I want them to do, they know how I want them to go about training, and they're just focused, go about their goals. No one's trying to do an armbar when I've just asked them to get attached to a chest, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas when we first start, like that's...
doing it a little bit and not like fully committing to it.
Yeah.
Like some of the brown belts and stuff are just like sat there chatting. I'm like, guys, you're supposed to be like sparring now, but within the constraints of what I've just said. And they're just
it's hard when their only experience of going live is either positional sparring or free sparring, where you can do whatever you want to try and win. Like that's how they interpret live resistance. Then you ask them to be more focused, and they're not used to it, and so like they naturally stray, and that's normal. Like I don't think you should like criticize someone for it. It's our job as a coach to try and pull them back into focus and remind them. Just be like, hey, remember what? And I like to just tease people and tell them they're cheating because like I feel like that works better than dude, come on, you're cheating. Beat him properly.
Yeah,
beat her properly.
This is I could literally sit here and talk about this like all day, like go way more into detail about game design and stuff. But I'm conscious of the fact that we've got trains to catch. Of course. Thank you for having us up here. The gym's amazing. If anyone
so much.
is in the London Whitechapel area, is that where we are?
Shadwell, right next to Whitechapel.
Yeah, come down,
East
visit
London.
Max and the guys. It's an amazing gym. We're going to be at the Endured Invitational Professional on August the 8th, I believe it is. Maybe the 2nd. It's early August.
Yeah, I think
it's early August. It might be the 2nd. We'll put it up in the show notes. Thanks for having us up.
My pleasure. Thank you
And
for coming down.
we'll definitely come down again. And we'll record again if you have us.
Awesome.
And,
Absolutely.
We'll go into detail on game design and stuff like that.
Let's do it.
Cool. Yeah, nice. Cool. Let's do it.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was amazing.
All right, guys, let's bow there and then we'll call it a day.